I mean, I think it's funny. I started my show on Monday being like, you guys expect me to come here and light this team on fire because they lose this terrible game. But I'm going to start with something positive, and that's that Sam Howell's playing good football. Because if like we're being honest, the most important thing for the rest of the season, and has been for the last couple of weeks, is Sam Howell, and is he the guy moving forward and all that kind of stuff, that big, gigantic, franchise-altering question. And he is continually pushing the needle towards yes. Like, if you had to make the decision right now, I would certainly, or if I had to make the decision right now, I would be like, yes, Sam Howell is our starter in 2024. Who wants to come, who wants to come work with him? And that would be where I'm at right now. He is showing the composure. He's showing that the moment is never too big for him. He's showing big time throws. He has taken his pressure to sack percentage number way down, or sack to pressure number way down. I believe PFF had it at 13.9% in this game. Remember, that number was 39% earlier in the season. So he is showing growth in every single area, and he's showing a level of consistency that I think is crazy impressive. But what's kind of nuts is, like, he's the reason they're competitive.
Yeah.
And for a team that has as much firepower weapon-wise as this team has, like we talked about on the defensive side of things, how having explosive playmakers just gives you more opportunities as an offense. And you see the impact of DK and Lockett and Smith and Jigba, and like what they can do with their running backs. And Shane Waldron does a phenomenal job of that. And Gino's just kind of got to distribute and let those guys make plays. The Commanders feel like the opposite. It's like they have Curtis, they have Terry, they have Jahan, they have Logan, they have these backs that we really like. And then Sam has to make magic out of stuff because why? And like, that's the thing I don't really understand, because EB is really smart. They've got concepts that work. In this game, it felt like the feel for it wasn't necessarily there, where, as you talked about, like they had things that were good on paper, but when they didn't work, like it took them forever to find the adjustments. And the real production comes from Sam creating something out of nothing. And I think that is not an ideal situation for a quarterback who still has started less than 15 games in his NFL career.
Yeah, and I think let's just run through the first couple of drives, because I think it helps kind of maximize what you're saying. And so obviously you get the TD to B-Rob, and B-Rob deserves a ton of credit, but to me this is Sam's play, right? He escapes his pocket, there's a pressure, he brings the flat players up, hits B-Rob, great job. Second drive, it ends up in a punt, right? So they do some good things on this play, right? Like but again, so they 1st and 10, 0-yard run. 2nd and 10, it's this bow concept. So, sit, in cut, and it's covered perfectly by Seattle. There's nowhere to go with the football. Sam scrambles to his right, attacks the line of scrimmage. Bobby Wagner steps up. Sam over the top, easy completion to him, right? Then there's an incompletion. There's a screen that doesn't work. Then Sam checks it down to Gibson on 3rd and 13 for nothing. So even in that sequence, like Seattle, I thought did a really good job of matching concepts. And the 2 productive plays they had on their first 10 plays were Sam kind of elevating the offense. And that's, I think, kind of speaks to your point, is that's kind of what it was. There wasn't a lot of easy stuff. Now, on the field goal drive, I think they did a great job of getting the concepts that they like. They on the 3rd and 2 with 14-12 in the second quarter, they run shallow cross, which is something that we've seen them run since day one of training camp. It ends up being kind of an explosive play to Logan Thomas, where there's like a little bit of a pick by Bates. So there was some stuff like that, but I think on the whole, it was the stuff they thought was going to work and hit didn't really work, and Sam kind of had to elevate. And so the stuff that was really successful, surprisingly, was like the quick game stuff, which leaving the game, I wasn't like, oh, the quick game was great, but that was the stuff that kind of worked for him. And Sam making plays off schedule, like the second play to B-Rob is a Sam off schedule play. And if they didn't get that kind of production from Sam, like when they get in that sequence of 3 and outs, like I think that's the other thing, is Seattle's defense made a couple big time plays. On the first 3 and out, they get a sack. 99 beats Chris Paul on a pass rush. And Chris Paul.
What happened on that play, by the way? It looked like when watching it back that Paul thought he was going to have help. Like his either just totally lost it technique wise, but it looked like he was trying to like push it back into Larson, and Larson's tied up with blocking 1-on-1. So did he just like misunderstand what was happening? Like what happened there?
Well, I think it was like a zero pressure or zero-ish type of pressure. So It's a kind of an all-out blitz. And in that look, if you're kind of expecting them to be sound as they rush. And I think Leonard Williams kind of vacates the B gap going back to the A gap, and you don't really expect that, honestly. If you're the guard, you kind of expect him to rush the B gap, but I really think that maybe
But you
Chris
still got to
didn't
like
know.
stay in front of him.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
You don't expect it. So like that's one thing about guys that kind of get like get the keys to the car, so to speak, is like JJ Watt's a good example of this. Like when you play outside of scheme, it is actually helpful for your individual production because you're supposed to be doing something. The offense knows you're supposed to be doing something, and you kind of release that opportunity, and it ends up being kind of it surprises the blocker more than anything else. I remember the hardest guys I used to play with was like Von Miller, because he would just go inside and lose contained, and you're like, there's no contained player to this defense now, but because he's Von Miller, he could do that kind of stuff. And I felt like Leonard Williams did that on that play, probably surprised him a little bit. And obviously you got to finish the play, but I'm saying the reason that's challenging, the reason it looks that way is probably because he was expecting something different. And so then they get that play, right? Then there's the next sequence where there's an incomplete pass, right? They just couldn't find the rhythm outside of those explosive plays. And I think that was the thing that was kind of frustrating, especially for the first half, is like they had two really nice explosives on Sam kind of being Sam. They had one to Logan Thomas, which was great in the context of the offense. But I think that was the thing that was a little frustrating, is that this defense for Seattle was, they played well, or they played them well, and took away some of the stuff that I think EB was counting on for kind of explosive, easy throws. And it wasn't there. Love the stick-to-itiveness, love the competitiveness of the group. They kind of figured it out. Some late plays to Terry McLaurin on slants on 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts. Great job there. But it did take a long time for them to get going. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm frustrated at the offense probably today a little bit, is because I feel like everyone's being critical of the defense, and rightfully so. They should be critical of the defense. But the offense could have definitely helped them out earlier if they had been a little bit more efficient, specifically in that second quarter of this game.
Right. I mean, in a lot of ways, this game, the two teams mirrored each other the entire game. Like the offenses struggled early. The defenses played pretty well early. And then late, fourth quarter, both offenses kick it into another gear and the defenses can't keep up.
Right.
Probably in part because they're exhausted from the early game production. It's more intense on the Seattle offense, Washington defense side of it by ultimately 3 points. But I think that, that's why some of this stuff sounds almost inverse of what we were talking about on the defensive side of the ball, because it literally was. The run-pass split, I know we talked about it a little bit here, but I just want to circle back to it. I know they weren't efficient, but I think you just have to live with some bad carries. Like, philosophically, that is how I feel. You have to live with some bad carries. It's the equivalent of an incompletion in the pass game. Like, you don't stop passing the ball because you have an incompletion. Don't stop running the ball because you have a 2-yard gain. It's fine. The next one might hit. And I think, again, going back to the fact that so much of this offense is on Sam right now, I would love to see them take a little bit off of his plate, not just to take some off of his plate because he seems like he can handle it right now, and like kudos to him. But I think it also, like, you're starting to become way too predictable. And Sam Cosmi talked about this after the game in the locker room. He's like, we became one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And you look at that 3-drive stretch in the second quarter. It's 9 plays, 408 total of possession. So you have the entire quarter, your offense is on the field for basically less than 5 minutes. I don't remember if that first drive started exactly in the second quarter, but it's your last 3 drives of the first half. You're on the field total for 408. And that includes, by the way, actually 12 plays because you punted 3 times, and that the time that Tressway kicks the ball in the air counts in your time of possession. So your offense is on the field for less than 4 minutes of those 3 drives, and it's 8 passes to 1 run. And like one of those drives is 53 seconds. And the difference between an incompletion and a 0-yard run. On a 0-yard run, the clock keeps ticking. That's less time your defense is going to have to be on the field later. And so I think that there's just a complementary nature to it. And I know I said this almost verbatim post-game, but there's a complementary nature that this team is missing. And I think there's also the schematic advantages of keeping a defense honest that this team is missing. That even if you throw away a 2-yard run on a 1st and 10 or a second and 10 even, and you wind up in 3rd and 8, like the next drive might be a little bit easier because the defense is going to have to play you more honest. And I think that is when this team gets into big ruts, is when they become incredibly predictable and one-dimensional. And you have to be able to sacrifice a little bit now for bigger production later.
That's something we'd probably have to look at like longitudinally from the season, like when they get in ruts, like what's the play call ratio. But what I would say, and I'm going to push back on this till the end of time, is if you want to do that, like look at Seattle. I think Seattle's a pretty good example of what you're talking about. I think they ran the ball 26 times, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They are hunting for good angles, good matchups, creative ways to find positive runs. And I think that's the thing that if you're going to do it, you got to do it, because I don't think Seattle had a lot of negative runs in this game. I don't think they had. I think maybe one of the 26. And you can live with that. As long as you don't take negative runs, you can live with that as an offensive play caller. And I think that's one thing that you can see it. You can feel it when EB's calling the game. He'll call a run, and it's like kind of a token run. It's like single back power or counter or whatever it is. And it hits for 0. And you can immediately, you're like, oh, he's off that now. He doesn't want that anymore. And so what I would say is, like, can you find ways to make your run game more efficient?
So what happened in that drive in the second half where they were efficient? They had the 4 straight big runs.
So they get to like outside zone stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. Let me go back to my notes real quick. So yeah, they so first off, the thing that I really, when you look at the runs in the first half, which I think we talked about in our production meeting, was like 6 or 7 runs, not overly efficient, mistargeted, guys losing one-on-ones, and they were kind of the base runs. They were kind of the runs that this team consistently runs: single back power, counter. They like to run weak with the fullback quite a bit, and they just weren't very effective. And then you get to this 15-yard run. It's outside zone to left. It's nothing super complicated. The thing that sticks out to me is that it's targeted correctly. So early in the game, they ran weak basically. Washington did, and they bring 21 Devin Witherspoon down in the box as like a strong safety type player, and you can tell that they don't know how to target that run. Or what I would call force. It's not weak. So the difference between weak is that you're running it away from the tight end. Force, you're running it to the tight end. So you're running it to the tight end. The tackle tight end combination on the front side is going to Witherspoon. The fullback is also going to Witherspoon, meaning that the middle linebacker, or the Sam linebacker in this case, is free and ends up making the tackle. So that's something that kind of pops up consistently. Is teams that run the ball well, they know where they target their runs. They're effective at it. They know where to go. And so when you look at the 15-yard gain, everyone's targeted correctly. It's outside zone. There's no fullback. The first combination goes to Witherspoon. Hey, he's the first guy in the box. Let's block that guy. Second combination goes to the next guy. And guys win their one-on-one matchups. And it's a little bit of they kind of subvert expectations a little bit, because in that single back look, like I said, they like to run Wanda, they like to run Pop, and they like to run GT. And so getting out of that a little bit, I thought was helpful. And the fact that the run was targeted correctly. But you don't get that run targeted correctly unless you put a little bit of time into it and kind of address that in the week. And I think that's something that you can tell. They just don't. It's not part of their offensive identity. Seattle, you can tell the receivers know who to block. The tight end knows who to block. The fullback knows who to block. They have motions and shifts to help cultivate angles in the run game. That's just not what this team is right now. And so you say you have to be okay with negative runs, or neutral runs, excuse me. I think you don't have to be. If you're Kyle Shanahan, if you're Seattle, if you're Detroit.
Well, sure, like positive is better than neutral.
But I'm saying they have cultivated an offensive identity that they don't take negative runs. And if they do, the percentage is way down because they've invested time into it. And we've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast, so it probably sounds like we're retreading old ground, which we are. But until they invest more time into it, this is what it's going to be. This is going to be the relationship. And until the coordinator... go ahead.
I hear you. I just disagree with it philosophically. Like, philosophically, I do not think you can sustain an offense in this league I think they're at like 32.5% run on first and second down. And for the reasons that I said, like, I'm okay with neutral. Like, EB might not be. I disagree with that.
Most coordinators are not, is what I would say. And so, right. I'm with you, man. Like, there's a reason.
By the way, philosophically, I'd also run this stuff during the week so that the run game could be more effective, which I know you agree with as well.
That's what I'm saying. Is like, if you want to do this, if you want to run the ball more, you just need to put more time into it. That's really what I'm saying. And like, you can just tell they don't put as much time into it as other teams do that are good at it, that are really, really efficient at it. They don't do that. And why is that? That seems, Andy Reid, whatever. But I think fans are calling for this better ratio. It'll always be like this until the coordinator believes it and until they invest more time into it. And the offense has been effective under certain parameters, not running the football a ton. And I get that. I agree with you. I think you want to run the football more, but I'm also of the mindset here that it's if it's I want a semi-effective run game. I want it to be productive. And I think that's where we're saying the same things, but one of the reasons why I think EB is so reluctant to engage with this run game is because it's not overly efficient and he loses confidence in it early. And then he'll get back to it in the second half, which is what you see with this kind of cluster of explosive runs. That's great. But in order for you to believe in it, you got to rep it, and he's got to see it. He's got to feel it, and he's got to be confident in it. Because if you're not productive with it, he's not going to call it. And I think that's ultimately what you're getting to is he doesn't trust it. But why doesn't he trust it is the question. And I think to me, it's because they don't put enough time into it in the week. And why don't they put enough time into it, or why don't they believe in it? I also think like when you watch teams that run the ball, they look a certain way. The targets look a certain way. The communications a certain way. The combinations look a certain way. And that's just not who this team is right now.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page. I just am like the result of doing it this way is you're not going to win a ton. And it's going to have an effect on your defense. It's going to make things harder for your offense. And that seems like a reason to do things the way that we're saying. And we're not asking for 60-40 even. Like it's just, can it be 65-35 would be an upgrade? That's crazy. Like, yeah. Can it be 63-37? We've now reached the end of my math skills, but that's really what we're looking for. All right. Anything else from the offense? We're already running long, but
yeah.
The receivers really quick, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there were times where they were open potentially, but I thought that Seattle's coverage guys did a great job. That back end did a really nice job, kind of negating Washington's receivers and making tight windows. And I thought the coverage matched well with the rush. And I thought the O-line played okay. Which is tough because I think Chris Paul had a pretty rough grade, but like played well enough to win the game. But there were situations where there's a little bit of pressure. Sam can't see the throw down the field. The coverage is a little bit tighter. It's longer developing. It doesn't work out. So I think that was a huge thing. But also, I just got to say, maybe the best throw of the year, that last play for the touchdown to Brown. Like, holy cow. You talk about big time throws, doesn't get more big time than that. And so every week, Sam will do something. You're just like your jaw's on the floor. Like that throw, it's over two Seattle defenders in like an impossibly small window. Like maybe his best throw of the year. And that's one thing that gets you excited about him is he has this ability to make plays back there. He's not a passenger to the offense. Like even when the offense was struggling early, like we talked about, they found explosive plays to B-Rob. Two of them, right, of him kind of being creative outside the pocket. They found a 15-yard gain to Terry on him vacating the pocket, making a play. And then that throw at the end of the game is you're not going to find a better throw. Like it was unbelievable. So
the thing I love too about that throw real quick from Sam is that like he does not vacate the pocket. Like we've talked about him vacating clean pockets. Like the O-line stood up and instead of being like, oh my God, my clock is going off, I have to get out of here. He's like, oh, I had time. All right, where can we go? And then he delivers a dart.
Yeah, and I think you see a nice maturation there from him with regard to that stuff. I thought he did a good job of getting the ball out of his hands versus certain pressure looks this week that helped elevate the offensive line and bring down that pressure to sack ratio. But I agree. Maybe run the ball a little bit more. The receivers were tough this week a little bit. I think Terry had an okay game, made some big plays down the stretch in terms of kind of big moments on slants and things like that, but very quiet. And I think it's because of how good that secondary was for Seattle.
Yeah. All right. That is Take Command for today. A lot to chew on there. So we'll see what they can figure out going ahead to New York again, who's been their arch nemesis. So we'll preview that game coming up on Friday. Obviously, don't miss take 5 in between now and then. So we got some fun stories on that tomorrow. For Logan, I'm Craig. Thanks for listening and watching. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe to us there if you're not already. And we'll see you next time on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.